Chapter 17, The Best Principal Ever. Mrs. Jules went from desk to desk, handing back everyone's history homework. "Nice job, Eric," she said to one of the Erics. "Well done, Eric," she said to another. "You better study the history of cabbage," she told the third Eric. "The ultimate test is coming." The third Eric, naturally, was Eric Ovens. He thought he knew all about the history of cabbage and felt bad when he saw his homework grade. Then he realized that Mrs. Jules had given him Eric Bacon's paper by mistake. It turned out that Eric Bacon had Eric Fry's homework and Eric Fry had his. They switched papers. Mrs. Jules moved on. "Nice job, Dee Dee, although your paper smelled somewhat strange." She stopped at Jason's desk and shook her head. "I was very disappointed, Jason." "Sorry," Jason muttered. He could barely keep his head up. "I was up all night reading." "You'll never finish the book, Mrs. Jules," said Allison. Suddenly, the classroom door swung open and banged against the wall. Everyone turned to see Mr. Kidswatter. "Good morning, children," he said. They stared at him. They'd never seen him inside of a classroom before. Mr. Kidswatter loudly cleared his throat. I said, "Good morning, children." Mrs. Jules hurried to the front of the room. She waved her hands like an orchestra conductor. "Good morning, Mr. Kidswatter," the children said in unison. The principal smiled. "What's all this?" he asked, pointing to 27 plastic containers stacked against the wall. "Toenails," said Paul. "And fingernails," added Leslie, so the principal wouldn't think the class was weird. "Well, I'm glad to see you're doing some important work here," said Mr. Kidswatter. "Would you like to donate a toenail or maybe a fingernail?" said Mrs. Jules. Mr. Kidswatter curled his fingers as he examined his nails. "Nope, still using mine. Anyway, that's not why I'm here. I'm looking for a student to bang the gong on Friday. I figured I'd start at the top and work my way down till I found someone willing to..." Every arm shot up in the air. Calls of "pick me" and "ooh, ooh" could be heard from around the room. "Oh," said Mr. Kidswatter, "I guess it won't take as long as I thought." "Me," begged Phoebe, stretching her arm high. "No, me," urged Dee Dee. It was impossible to know where Mr. Kidswatter was looking. He wore mirrored sunglasses even indoors. Joy had both hands raised, doubling her chances of being picked. "You're the best principal ever," she called out. Mr. Kidswatter's head turned. "You!" he boomed, pointing his finger. Everybody groaned, except for the one person he had chosen. "Me?" Stephen asked meekly. "You?" Mr. Kidswatter said, sounding somewhat surprised. "Yes, you. I chose you, didn't I?" he declared, "and I don't make mistakes." He strode towards Stephen, then placed his big hands on both sides of Stephen's desk and leaned over. "Be in my office Friday, 2 minutes before 3 o'clock. You will get one, and only one swing of the mallet, so you better not miss. You better hit the very center of the gong at exactly 3 o'clock. Not a second early, not a second late. There are no second chances." Stephen's right leg was shaking. The principal straightened up and headed towards the door. "Goodbye, children," he said. He stopped. He waited. He folded his arms across his chest. Mrs. Jules waved her arms like an orchestra conductor. "Goodbye, Mr. Kidswatter," everyone said together. As soon as the principal was gone, everyone crowded around Stephen's desk. "You're so lucky," said Jason. "This is the best thing that ever happened to anyone in our class," said Jenny. "You better not blow it," said Joy, "or else no kid's ever going to get to ring the gong again." "Can you even lift the mallet?" said Terrence. Stephen didn't say anything. He hadn't heard a word they said. It was as if the moment Mr. Kidswatter had said "you," someone had banged a loud gong inside Stephen's head. Gong! the mirror. Dr. Pickle kept two things on his desk. One was a bust of Sigmund Freud. A bust is a statue of someone's head, neck, and shoulders. Sigmund Freud was the most famous psychologist ever. He was Dr. Pickle's hero. Dr. Freud also had a beard. The second thing on Dr. Pickle's desk was a handheld mirror. Dr. Pickle checked his beard at least 5 times a day just to make sure it was trimmed just right. Now, however, that was the least of his worries. He looked at his face in the mirror. His cheek was puffed out. His tongue was sticking out. One eye was closed. One eyebrow was raised. He looked like a big doofus. He gently swung his pickle stone between his face and the mirror. "I am getting sleepy," he said to himself. "By the count of 5, I will fall asleep. 1, 2, thrub. His head plopped down on his desk. This would normally be the time when Dr. Pickle would tell his patient what she was supposed to do when she woke up. But he was his own patient, and both patient and doctor were sleeping. Sometimes later, a car horn honked. It sounded to him like there was an angry driver right behind him. Dr. Pickle woke up. He had no idea how long he'd been sleeping. It took him a moment to remember who he was, where he was, and why he had tried to hypnotize himself. He picked up the mirror and checked his face. No change. "Now what am I supposed to do?" he said. That was strange. He had felt his mouth move when he spoke, but the mouth in the mirror didn't move. He brought his hands to his face. He could see his hands touching the face in the mirror too. The cheek in the mirror was still all puffed up, but his own cheek felt soft and flat. He moved his tongue around in his mouth, even though the tongue in the mirror was sticking out at him. He set the mirror on his desk. "This is very interesting," he said aloud. Clearly, the face shifts to whoever stares at it, he realized. He turned the mirror over, face down. He hadn't read about this in any of his psychiatry books. He slowly raised the mirror, caught a glimpse of the hideous face that was still there, and quickly lowered it back down on his desk. This discovery would make him famous. He picked up the bust of Sigmund Freud. "Even more famous than you," he said to it. But would all that fame be worth it? What if someone else's face got stuck along the way? "What would you do?" he said, Dr. Freud. There's a reason it's called a bust. It was made of bronze and felt heavy in his hands. He flipped the mirror over and slammed Sigmund Freud down on top of it. The face shattered. Up in Mrs. Jewell's class, Kathy suddenly felt very dizzy and confused. She looked at the sentence she had just written. "I can't read this. It's backward." "Let me see," said DJ, taking it from her. "How'd you do that? That's so cool." "Warm," Kathy replied. Chapter 19. Pushdowns. Stephen lay on the playground, surrounded by his classmates. He grunted as he pushed down on the blacktop with all his might. Nothing happened. "You can do it," urged Mauricia. "Push harder, Stephen," encouraged Joe. Stephen pushed harder. He grunted louder. Still nothing. Louis, the art teacher, blew his whistle. "Hey, what's going on here?" he asked as he made his way to Stephen. "Stephen's trying to do a push down," said Damien. "You mean a push up," corrected Kathy. "Why do you always have to be so opposite all the time?" asked Damien. "Stephen isn't pushing up, he's pushing down." "Yeah, so he can get up," said Myron. Kathy didn't mean to be opposite. She discovered she liked being nice and having friends. She just really thought that they were called push-ups. "How many has he done so far?" asked Louis. "None," said Jason. "But he's trying really hard." Louis kneeled and patted Stephen on the back. "Keep it up, Stephen," he encouraged. "Every day you'll get a little stronger. In a month, I'll bet you'll be able to do 5 pushdowns. A month? Exclaimed Dee Dee. Stephen doesn't have a month. He's got to bang the gong on Friday, explained Ron. Louis raised one eyebrow. His mustache twitched. I guess he really is the best principal ever, he muttered. What? Asked Matt. Never mind, said Louis. Push hard, Stephen. The mallet is made of solid iron. Stephen grunted louder than ever. He didn't move. I can't do it, Louis, he gasped. Talk to Mr. Kidswatter. Tell him to pick someone else. Ooh, me, exclaimed Joy. Mr. Kidswatter is the smartest principal in the school, said Louis. He must have had a very good reason for choosing you. Would you like to donate a toenail or maybe a fingernail? Mrs. Jules asked. Mr. Kidswatter examined his nails. Nope, still using mine. I need a student to bang the gong on Friday. Next thing he knew, all those kids had their arms up in the air. They were making strange noises like ooh, ooh, and me. You're the best principal ever, someone shouted. Those were magic words. He turned to see who had shouted them when suddenly he saw her, that awful girl who had given him that awful face. You, he boomed, pointing at Dana. Dana had a mosquito bite on her ankle, however, and at that moment she bent down to scratch it. Stephen sat behind Dana. He lay on the blacktop, staring up at the awful cloud. I'm doomed, he moaned. Look, Stephen, I don't know what will happen on Friday, Louis admitted. I don't know if you're going to hit the gong or drop the mallet on your toe, but I know this. You have to try, or else you will regret it every day for the rest of your life. Whenever you hear a gong, your heart will be filled with terrible sadness. You don't really hear gongs all that often, Myron pointed out. I mean, except here. Even if you make $1 million someday, said Louis, you could buy your own gong and hit on it every day, all alone in your great big mansion, but it won't be the same. That is so sad, said Leslie. Paul sniffed back a tear. So, what do you say, Stephen? Asked Louis. You want to give it one more try? Stephen wished Louis hadn't mentioned dropping the mallet on his toe. Now that was all he could think about. He sighed and rolled back over. He pushed as hard as he could. You can do it, Stephen, urged Allison. Push, said Jason. Down, encouraged Kathy. Up. Now she really was confused. Stephen rose an inch off the ground and collapsed. Everyone cheered. One more, and then we'll go to the monkey bars, urged Louis, and we'll do some pull-downs. Chapter 20. Inside the closet. Jason did it. He finished reading all 999 pages. He was so tired he didn't know how he made it up the stairs to Mrs. Jewell's class. He fell asleep somewhere around the 4th floor and woke on the 28th. Did you finish your book yet? Allison asked him when he entered the classroom. She and Rhonda giggled. Yep, said Jason. The girls' mouths open. His book report only had to be 1 page, but Jason had written 10 pages. It was impossible just to write 1 page about a 999-page book. He wondered if anybody had ever written a book with more pages. Probably not. There's probably a law against writing a book with 1,000 pages or more. He brought the 10 pages and his 3 pictures to Mrs. Jewell's desk. I guess if somebody writes a book with 999 pages, it has to be really good, he said, or else no one would ever read it. I don't know, Mrs. Jules admitted. I've never read a book that long. Jason sleepily handed over all his papers. Where's your paperclip? Said Mrs. Jules. It got all bent in my backpack, he explained, too tired to think about what he was saying. Unbent, really. I guess the 999-page book was too heavy for it. He showed Mrs. Jules his paperclip, now unbent to a crooked line. Mrs. Jules put her hand to her mouth, horrified. You bent your paperclip? she gasped. Unbent, said Jason. Mrs. Jewls stood up. You better come with me, she explained. She grabbed Jason by his ear and yanked him towards the door. Ow, he whispered. All around the room, he could hear. He read a 999-page book, but he bent his paperclip. He wrote a 10-page book report, but he bent his paperclip. No, he unbent it. Everyone stop talking now, ordered Mrs. Jewls. Do not leave your seats for any reason. She pulled Jason out of the room and slammed the classroom door behind her. She dragged him straight to the closet that wasn't there. Jason read the signs. Keep back. Do not open doors. Danger. Call the fire department if you smell something unusual. He sniffed. Couldn't smell anything. Yet. Mrs. Jewls turned the dial on the padlock as she quietly said the combination to herself. 24, 17, 6. The lock opened. But you said it wasn't there, Jason pointed out. Of course it's there, said Mrs. Jewls. Hold this. She gave Jason one end of the heavy chain. He remained where he was as Mrs. Jewls took the other end and walked 4 times around the closet, unwrapping it. Then she took Jason's end from him and tossed the chain aside. It clanged against the floor. A steel bar, held in place by 2 clamps, still blocked the closet doors. The locks on the clamps had letters instead of numbers. Jason watched as Mrs. Jewls set one lock to ABC and the other lock to BDBC. The clamp snapped open. I'm really sorry about the paperclip, Mrs. Jewls, said Jason. A little late for that, don't you think? Said his teacher. She lifted the steel bar and tossed it aside. A loud clank echoed down and up the stairs. Mrs. Jewls walked down several steps. Jason watched, amazed, as she slid open a secret compartment hidden in the 3rd step from the top. She removed 2 keys, one red, one green. Mrs. Jewls put the green key in the red hole, the red key in the green hole. I have to turn them towards each other at precisely the same time, she said, or else it will trigger sirens and smoke screen. Jason held his breath as he watched her turn the keys. The doors clicked open. Ever since the closet first appeared, he and his friends had been trying to guess what was inside it. They imagined all kinds of horrible things, but what Jason saw now was worse than anything they'd ever imagined. The closet was empty. Don't lock me in there, Mrs. Jewls. I didn't do it on purpose. The book was too heavy. He tried to remember all he had seen and heard. 3rd step from the top. Red key and green hole. 27, 6, 14. ABCD. No, it was too much. He was slipping it out of his brain as fast as he could remember. Call the dry fire department if you smell something unusual. I don't want to become an unusual smell. What are you blabbering about, said Mrs. Jewls. Why would I lock you in a closet? She bent over. Jason looked again. The closet wasn't completely empty after all. There in the back corner was a small cardboard box. Mrs. Jewls picked it up. A price tag stuck to the side read 89 cents. Mrs. Jewls opened the top flap and removed a paper clip. Now, don't tell anyone where you got this, she said as she handed it to him. I won't, he promised. She put the box back in the closet, shut and locked the doors, turning the color-coded keys in opposite directions. She returned the keys to their secret hiding place. She grunted as she lifted the steel bar, and then again when she set it in place. She snapped the clamp shut and spun the dials on the locks. Jason picked up one end of the chain and walked 4 times around the closet. Mrs. Jewls secured the padlock. I'm very proud of you, Jason, for finishing the whole book, she said. I was kind of sorry when it ended, said Jason. Teacher and student returned to class.